This is for Betty. Betty, what's your favorite memory of working with Alan on Password?
Oh, when somebody would say something really dumb, the way he'd deal the audience in, you know, one of those things like, well, I didn't say a thing. You know, and then I always remember that hand that would come down there. I think the first time he took me home was probably the nicest.
Oh, we miss him. One of the proudest things I have, as I was the first recipient of the Alan Ludden Humanitarian Award. Our mothers were very close, Tess and Jean. Her Tess, my Jean. And the Motion Picture Mothers have a wonderful organization that we belong to, and we go every year. And the first year, I was awarded that by the mothers and by Betty and everybody, and I'm very proud of that.
Oh,
very honored to be.
Bless your heart.
You know, since Al did receive an honorable mention earlier in the show, I should mention that we did Tattletales together a lot, Al and I, if you all remember Tattletales. It was hosted by the late Bert Convy, who was also my boss on Win, Lose, or Draw. And please bear in mind, this was a long time ago, and I did have someone else's hair. Here we are on Tattletales.
Could you find the exact room where you spent your wedding night? Goodbye. That's the question. You can't talk to anybody about it. He has to just go there. Find the exact room where the two of you spent your wedding night. Could he find that without any problem whatsoever?
Sure he could.
Oh, how come?
'Cause he was crippled, and it was really an awful night.
Would you like to tell us about it?
I won't go into detail, but no, when we got married, Al had a bad leg, and it was
Oh.
awful. I had to get him all doped up to even get him to say I do. And then with the champagne on top of that, it was an awful wedding night.
Not a lot of action there, huh?
Good night and see you tomorrow.
Yeah. But does he remember
Nice
where the
talking
room
to
was?
you. Sure.
Where was it?
It was in our house.
Oh. Okay, then he could probably find it today without
Probably
any help.
could,
couldn't he?
yeah. It's not ours anymore, but he could find it.
All right, so the answer was yes.
Yeah.
He could do that.
Sure.
Okay, here he comes. Where was that room? Could you find it without consulting anybody about it, Al?
Sure, it was our bedroom.
That's what the lady said.
Now, you know, you mentioned earlier that you taped 5 shows in a day, and a lot of people out here went, ugh. I think that's probably true for all people, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
I used to show up at 5 o'clock. We'd play poker to 6 o'clock. This is our Newlywed Game. Play poker to 6 o'clock. Do the first show at 6:30. Be home at 9:30. And you work 35 days a year, so you do 35 weeks of shows. They rerun half of them. So you do the whole year in 35 days.
So it's a pretty good gig.
Oh, it's the greatest job in the world.
What, Price is Right, totally different?
No, we would work on that show. Tom is looking at me and shaking his head.
A little different on that show.
A little different, because we would be putting out 4 shows in the beginning a day, and it would be 14-hour days.
There were so many props.
And rehearsing.
So many games.
But generally speaking, if you have celebrity guests on the show, you do 5 in a day just logistically, because it's easier, don't you? Because
Yeah, you have
it's
the
like bring
celebrities for
5
one day.
changes of clothes and you do 5 shows.
Yeah. Well, when Dick Clark was doing Pyramid, they would
Yes.
sometimes they'd do a jam-up weekend. He'd do 15 shows a day for 3 days.
Right, I don't get the whole
I
thing.
would do that in this very studio. I did maybe, in this studio alone, did over 4,000 shows. This was our studio, this and across the hall.
Yeah.
And some weekends, for the summer, we'd get 8 weeks ahead, so we'd do 15 shows in 3 days.
Gosh.
But
Can I do
I'm
You're talking about a day.
A day.
15 shows in one
Yeah.
night.
Yeah, no,
A
he did
day,
30
and then
in a
tomorrow
weekend.
15, and
Oh,
then
no,
the next day 15.
no,
You know, he
I'm
would-
not that
But
cute.
when Password started, oddly enough, Password was a big hit right off the bat, so they did a nighttime version, too. So we lived up in Westchester, and he'd come in and he'd do 2 shows, and then he'd go all the way home, then come back in the next day and do 2 more shows, and then go home, and the third day do 2 more shows. And first of all, you know how much more expensive that would be, to say nothing of the wear and tear. Now you grab 5 hangers and you come in and you do your job
Do 5
and you
outfits.
keep changing your clothes. in 10
Videotape
minutes.
changed all that, you see. You couldn't
Right.
do it prior to the invention of videotape.
Right, right. Quick question?
For Peter Marshall,
Yes,
were
dear.
all the people on Hollywood Squares just naturally funny, or was there material given to them?
Well, I'll explain it to you. They were never given the answers. They were never given the questions. As an example, to Paul Lynde, they might say, Paul, in the first show, Pete's got a question for you. It relates to, it's a sports question. A good bluff might be 7. A good joke might be about half. Now, I didn't know who was set up. I didn't know what the straight line was, but I would say, Paul, how many men on a hockey team? He'd say about half.
Yeah.
And we used to give Paul very butch questions anyway.